Hello, and welcome to Carrier Code, your inside track to the strategies, stories, and leaders driving the trucking industry forward. Today's episode is brought to you by Driver's Legal Plan, the nation's leading CDL defense law firm, and produced by Bulldog, trucking's podcast pros. I'm Christy Choice here with my co-hosts, Justin Copeland and Rocco Marrari. How are we doing today, guys?
Doing great. Looking forward to another great episode here.
Guys, I am so excited to be here today. We have an episode that's going to be epic. Just wait and hear and see what we're going to be talking about here, guys.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's jump right in. We're so grateful that everyone has tuned in, and it is National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. And today's episode is all about celebrating drivers the right way. We're sharing our best strategies to help you build a fleet of appreciated drivers, right? They should feel appreciated. And that's what trucking is all about, right? Really just sharing the love for the industry and moving America forward. Okay. And so again, we want to help you build strategies that are going to help you to incentivize those drivers and make sure you have a successful driver appreciation week. All right, Justin, what do you have for us?
Thanks for that, Christy. I'm excited to jump in here because today we're talking about something really important to our industry, National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. This is all about recognizing the men and women who keep our economy moving, often without much recognition. And let's be honest, without truck drivers, nearly everything we rely on day to day simply wouldn't be there. Now, if you've ever eaten a meal, bought clothes, filled up your car, or even ordered something online, you've relied on a truck driver. Nearly everything we touch at some point spent time on a truck. And the people behind the wheel, they're the ones that make sure it gets from point A to point B safely, on time, and often under some tough conditions. So what exactly is National Truck Driver Appreciation Week? Well, it's a week set aside every September to recognize and celebrate the 3.5 million professional truck drivers across the United States. It's a chance for us as an industry and for the public to stop and say thank you. These men and women keep our economy moving, often sacrificing time at home, dealing with long hours, unpredictable weather, and the challenges of the road. Behind every truck is a person. A dad or a mom, a son or a daughter, a friend, a neighbor. They're out there not just driving freight, but also helping when someone's stranded on the side of the road, navigating traffic that tests anyone's patience, and working hard to keep themselves and everyone else safe. That's something worth appreciating. During this week, carriers, shippers, and communities hold events, cookouts, giveaways, and simple thank you campaigns. You'll see everything from free meals at truck stops to recognition events at terminals. Even a simple wave, a thank you note, or just letting a driver know you respect the work they do makes a big difference. So as we head into National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, let's keep in mind that without truck drivers, life as we know it would come to a screeching halt. The week is about saying thank you, but honestly, that gratitude should be extended all year round. To every driver out there listening, we see you, we appreciate you, and we couldn't do what we do without you. Thank you for keeping America moving.
Wow, Justin, that was so amazing. Thanks for getting us started. And, as we prepared for this episode, I did a little bit of research. And so on the ATA website, the American Trucking Association's website, I was able to learn that National Truck Driver Appreciation Week just started as Driver Appreciation Week. It started in 1988. And then it really took off as a national event in 1998. And so we've been doing this for a while. At work, I'm able to contribute in some really, really cool ways. And I love that every single year, it's a really big deal and drivers feel celebrated. So carriers are really pulling out all the stops. I've seen some do it really, really well and some not so well. But just like you said, it's so important for so many reasons. Rocco, drivers do a bunch of stuff that you or I don't do and wouldn't have to do in our regular day-to-day lives. Don't you agree?
Oh, 100%, Christy. Sit back and think about this number quick, guys. 3.5 million drivers. That is astronomical. If you put that in perspective, compared to every other, profession out there, it's unbelievable, what these men and women do for us. I know there is no way in the world, I'm just telling you, I could ever be a driver. The amount of time on the road, the situations that they're in, Justin, like you stated, the road conditions, the weather conditions, not only making sure that, you're hauling freight properly, but you're safe, the motoring public safe. We have some men and women who are truly driving, moving bombs down the highway. We have bulk carriers, and that is just an amazing, amazing feat for everybody. So, when we talk about these drivers, we need to celebrate them. And Justin, to your point, not just for a week,
Absolutely.
every day, because without them, like you stated, we're not going to be able to move the country forward, or North America forward, or Europe forward. We have drivers across the world, so they're a special person that can really handle that profession. And I'm so pleased that now we call them professional drivers.
Mm-hmm.
I know back in the day when I was a police officer, their job, they were just drivers. They were steering wheel holders. That's what they were, and that's what they thought about themselves, and a lot of the times. And then all of a sudden, that shifted, and that shift turned to professional drivers. And I think that's just amazing, aspect of where we're going within this industry, guys. So we need to put out all the stops for all these drivers and show them exactly, what we feel about them and how we appreciate every little thing that they do. Because even something as simple as backing a trailer up, these are very, very large trailers, and little things like that, I don't think, most people really take into consideration when you're looking at a driver and trying to understand what they do. So again, with all that, we appreciate all the drivers out there, and we want to just share to the carriers and everybody out here how we can actually, help that going forward, and really share the respect that we have for those drivers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, even as we're talking, I'm not emotional or anything, but it does bring a different level of gratitude. And I'm so grateful that we get to have this discussion today. All right. So after the break, three unique perspectives on the true impact Driver Appreciation Week can have on your fleet. From perfect execution to missed opportunities, we've got some real stories that can prove why this week matters more than most companies realize. Stay with us. This is Carrier Code.
Carrier Code is sponsored by Driver's Legal Plan, CDL ticket defense for professional drivers. Hey, Justin from Carrier Code here. I'd like to thank Driver's Legal Plan. They protected my CDL while I was out there on the road. They can protect yours too. It just takes a phone call. It's only $2.98 a week, and they will help protect your CDL. Contact Driver's Legal Plan today and let them defend you like they have me and more than 400,000 other cases. When you need CDL ticket defense, there's only one, Driver's Legal Plan. Call 1-800-580-8789 or visit driverslegalplan.com for your free consultation. Again, that's 1-800-580-8789 or driverslegalplan.com.
All right, welcome back to Carrier Code. Today we are talking all about National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, and we've kind of learned a little bit about the history of National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, and Justin filled us in on why it's important, and Rocco let us know, yeah, drivers definitely need some appreciation because they do things that you or I probably wouldn't do. They deserve the recognition. But one of the things about Carrier Code is that Justin, Rocco, and we come from such different parts of the industry. So we're introducing a new segment called Perspectives. And so Justin is going to share his perspective, being a former driver and a current VP of safety. From your perspective, tell us about some of the hits and misses from National Truck Driver Appreciation Week writ large for the industry. Let's talk about it, Justin.
Yeah, great topic as far as Truck Driver Appreciation Week, because honestly, the motor carriers probably don't put enough emphasis into this. I think we're seeing the trend change, and that they are putting a bigger emphasis in this. I know during the break we were talking amongst ourselves, but some leadership at some carriers might look at it like, hey, this is X amount of dollars per driver. It's north of $100 per driver, whatever it is, it's going to equate to X amount of dollars. And they just see that value. They see the dollars. They don't see the morale boost or or the thing that actually hurts morale within their organization if they don't take it serious. This is something that you shouldn't be planning in this week. All right. If you're sitting here this week and trying to figure out what you're doing for National
It's
Truck
too
Driver
late.
Appreciation Week, it's too late, right?
Oh,
You're-
yeah.
Yeah, you've missed the boat.
Hey, wait, zero judgment, but you've missed it. You're right, Justin.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you've
you know,
missed the essence of what it's about.
Yeah.
And guys, and the drivers are going to realize this.
Mhm.
They're going to know that. My goodness,
They
this
see
was
it.
last minute. It's going to be clear.
Yeah. And I'll tell you is unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, in my career, I've worked for carriers like that, both as a driver and, on the office side of things. And I'll tell you, as a driver, the thing is like, oh, it's a terminal cookout. Oh, that's great. All the office people get to eat the food that's meant for us while we're out working. And by the time we
Yeah.
get back from a very, very long day, well, guess what? A lot of those people, they've left and they're not even there anymore. So no one's there to cook us hamburgers or hot dogs or brats or anything like that. They may be in a pan sitting in a break room or something like that. So I'll tell you, make sure that you understand how your freight operation works and whether a cookout's actually worth it or not. I know that was a go-to for many years. I will tell you that, we do that here at United Road. We still do cookouts at certain terminal locations because they're local and our drivers are in there throughout the day multiple times. So they can eat a hot meal, they can take a break, grab something to drink and just relax for a little bit and just really have some conversations and be appreciated for what they do. It is something that you really got to be thoughtful in what you decide that you're going to move forward with as a gift, right? Really, that's where you should be looking, is taking in the feedback from your drivers, okay? And hearing what they find valuable, what would be a gift that they like. Because I'll tell you, we actually ping our drivers stuff the entire year. Truck Driver Appreciation Week and planning for that and planning for what we are going to get our drivers, that starts Jan 1. It does. We start talking to our drivers, feeling out maybe the things that they're interested in, items that they maybe like. And it's a long process. It's just an information gathering. And then we'll, sometime probably in the late spring, early summer, we end up going and talking to our vendors and start putting together some ideas.
Hey, Justin,
Yep.
Not to interrupt you, but on that, do you recommend then reaching out to you just stated that, reaching out to your vendors? I hear that from a couple carriers, but I don't see that often enough. Can you fill us in a little bit about, how that comes into play for you guys at URS?
Yeah. So surprisingly, for some of you guys out there that might not know, is your vendors would be willing to contribute to something. Okay. Whether it be just a gift card or maybe some swag, or sometimes maybe actually a financial commitment to say, hey, put this money towards your overall funds for Truck Driver Appreciation Week. All right. And, we've done that a time or two here, but it's something that you can certainly, if you have that relationship with a longstanding vendor, certainly ask them to join in and invite them out. Invite them out too, right? If you have that operation that's local, invite them out and let them be a part of it and see where their money's going, why it's important, and why you asked, right? Now, our items that we picked this year come specifically from drivers, okay? So, while I'm not the one that actually makes the decisions, that actually falls into our retention group and our HR group, but they heard what our drivers said and they moved forward with it. And we moved forward with a nice Stanley Cup, not some cheap kind of throwaway thing, but a nice Stanley Cup, a Travis Matthews hat, in a small zipper bag. Now that's something that zipper bag is more specific to the car haul industry. It's something that they can store their keys in while loading and unloading, just to keep them all in one place. So, it's meant to be a thoughtful gift, but that feedback on those first two items, and even the third, that's from our drivers. That's from being present, being out there in the field and asking those questions at a time when you might not honestly be thinking about it, and then providing that feedback back to your leadership. So those are what I see as like the steps to a good hit for Truck Driver Appreciation Week.
Yeah. Well, I love that perspective, Justin, right? Because I think that what you're saying is everyone is different. Now, here at Carrier Code, this is a no judgment zone. So if you're the one with the hot dogs and hamburgers and the brats, hey, more power to you. We're always aiming to get better, though. So just make sure like that's your default. Like, hey, this is what we're doing this year, but we want to always get better, because there's ways that you can infuse a little bit of creativity. It's funny, I was in New Orleans a few weeks ago, and so I jumped into an Uber to go meet some friends downtown, well, on Bourbon Street. it was New Orleans, okay? And so I always have a good conversation with my Uber driver. Are you local? What's going on with you? Who are you? What's the good spots to go eat? Where do the locals go, right? And so in that conversation, and I said, "Hey, how long have you been driving Uber?" And he was like, "Oh, I just do this when I'm not driving my truck." Haha. And I said, "Oh my goodness, really? So you're in the trucking industry?" I said, "I am too." And so he said, "Yeah, I work for such and such carrier, but when I'm home or I'm going to drive Uber just to kind of supplement my income and get out, and I like to talk to people, all that good stuff." And I said, "Okay, wonderful, wonderful." And so he's like, "Actually, I'm on this app right now and I'm looking for another carrier because I want to do something different. I've been doing this for 18 years." And I said, "Hey, let me ask you something. Truck Driver Appreciation Week is coming up soon." And he said, "Oh," like this loud groan, right? Like, and I said,
Yeah.
"What? What's that all about?" And he
Sounds like
said,
not a
"I
good
have a
experience.
Exactly. He said, "I have a closet full of company branded swag that I will never use." And he was like, I mean, I enjoy being thought of, but also it's stuff that I won't use. So Justin, I love that you all are surveying your drivers, kind of asking them what would be helpful, what's not helpful. Because here's the thing, you're spending the money just for it to
Mhm.
potentially not be used and not really meet its intended goal of really making your drivers feel appreciated. Now, that was one guy. I've heard that kind of thought, though, ripple through the industry a little bit. And so it's wonderful because he wants to remain a truck driver, but he's kind of like, that's for them, right? And I feel like we as an industry can turn that around and help every driver to feel like, man, they listened, they helped me. Now, are we going to get it right 100% of the time? No. Some people are just entitled and they want it all. Like they just want everything. And sometimes it's not realistic. It's not in the budget. And you want to be able to kind of cover all your bases and make sure all drivers feel appreciated. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think, Rocco, you said it earlier, but even from the vendor perspective, at 10th Street, last year I was on that committee that evaluated incoming client requests, and we get quite a lot of requests asking for us to help contribute to their National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. And we get to, look at a whole lot of different criteria to decide who gets what and how we, divvy out the budget that we set up for National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, because we want to continue to support what carriers are doing. If it's important to carriers, it's important to 10th Street. If it's important to drivers, it's important to us, right? So there's this cycle of importance here, but I just am so elated knowing that it's important to a whole lot of different people. And even from a personal perspective, like you can like be at a truck stop and thank a driver. You can say hello. You can just be, I mean,
Mhm.
share the road courteously, right? Just start with
Yeah.
the
Just
things that you can
anything.
do that don't cost any
Anything.
money, right?
Yep.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah,
Start with
for
sharing
sure.
the road. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
that part.
what you had mentioned there though, Christy. Be thoughtful in whether you logo or don't logo something. Sometimes you're going to logo
Yeah.
things because it's going to be used during the course
Yeah.
of work. It's something that you think is going to help improve their work conditions, things like that. But not everything you give them has to be logoed. For that
Yeah.
point you just pointed out.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
great point.
for sure.
Christy, and you mentioned something about vendor perspective and so forth. At Pedigree, we started internally what we call the Culture Club, and I wish carriers would have that, because really it's out there to build up morale, and you're building up the morale within the company and doing things to make everybody feel appreciated. So and the Culture Club, they'll do things like ice cream socials and different different things like that, and even for us who are remote, they make sure that we're involved. So, I wish carriers, would start looking at things in that perspective of really growing that culture within the organization.
Yeah, because I feel like, Rocco, what you're talking about is a disconnect, right, between
Mhm.
the folks at the top who are running the company. You're talking about the C-suite and the
Yeah.
executives and those who directionally help with the company growth. But
Mhm.
there's also like the drivers, and I'm not saying they're on the bottom. I'm just saying they're out and about. They're, over the road doing their thing. And there's just a disconnect because there's not always those touch points for the two to meet. And I think that there's some intentionality needed to make sure that the execs understand that real world implication of what you really appreciating their drivers can do to morale, and how it really can impact retention long term. What do you think about
No,
that?
you're 100% correct. execs really need to look at this from a broader scale. The margins within our industry are minute, 1 to 3%. If you're a really, really profitable fleet, maybe 4, that's on the rare side. The cost right now to onboard a driver, can be north of $8,000. $8,000.
Woo.
And, execs don't, put that into their perspective at times because they're looking at bottom dollar, and rightfully so. That's what they need to do. They need to be profitable.
Yeah.
But when you have morale issues and you have a driver who's upset, it could be they may be having a bad day, and it's, again, driver appreciation week, and they got, like we're talking, something that they feel is just something to get the job done. A branded t-shirt, whatever it may be. They're delivering that load. They're already upset. They've had a bad day. They don't feel appreciated. Guess what they're going to be doing? They're going to be talking to other drivers, looking to go elsewhere.
Yep.
So it's little things like that we really need to open our eyes about and put that into light where, okay, Justin, you said, it might be $100 a driver, depending on the size of your fleet. Spending 100, 150, maybe even 2, whatever it may be, is still going to be less than losing that driver and then having to replace that driver. Because if you think about it, now, not only did you lose that body, who knows what's going to happen to that load? Now you may upset a customer because now you're going to be late. You're not going to be able to deliver that load. So everything snowballs from there. So when you could take just a little, a little thing like Driver Appreciation Week and actually put some thought and put some effort behind it. And again, like we did at Pedigree, create a culture club, name it whatever you want, but have that group be the ones who really are driving this forward and, support them. The C-level needs to support this initiative because, again, it reflects on your organization. You want to be seen as that company, that carrier who people want to drive for, who people appreciate. At that point, your drivers are happy. Your customers are going to be happy. This is such much more broader than just appreciating drivers, which you should be doing on a daily basis anyway. They want to be more than a number. They want to feel part of the organization. They want to feel like they have an impact. And if you take those little steps, that's how you can get there. It's like, growing up in sports, we were always told, you take the little steps and then the big things will happen. So you take that first step by creating that culture club, by creating a group who is responsible for this. Let that morph into something great. Now, you let them become the hero in this, but you had a say in it. And now your retention goes up, your profitability goes up, your drivers are happy, your customers are happy. Again, it's just such a big snowball that has such a great benefit for any exec out there, any carrier out there. So you really need to put forth effort and make sure that you do this right because it has long-standing effect on the morale of your company if you mess this up. And I've seen it happen. I know, Justin, you have, Christy, you have. And
absolutely.
So, when you're doing this, put some thought into it, have some input. And like Justin, like you said, listen to the drivers, listen to other carriers, brainstorm, talk to amongst each other. We do that all the time. So see what's working and then bring that into your organization. So,
Okay, Rocco, you are dipping into all of this good stuff. And you know what? We want to kind of break down this list, right? Because you're dropping gems over here. Like you're like one after the other.
There we go.
And I cannot wait. Okay, so after the break, the blueprint you've been waiting for, our top tips on how to execute a successful driver appreciation program. We're going to wrap this all up together in just a few moments. Stay with us. This is Carrier Code.
Want even more Carrier Code? Visit us online at carriercodepodcast.com and follow us on socials at Carrier Code Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. That's how we keep the conversation going.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we've been talking all things National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, NTDAW. Now, we have talked about all kind of little tips and tricks, but we wanted to make it make sense because this is Carrier Code Podcast, by the way. So we are here with the ABCs of National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. Ask your drivers, build a budget, create a committee, and there might be some bonus alphabets in there. Let's talk about it. Ask your drivers. How are they going to do that? What are our best practice suggestions, Justin and Rocco?
I would tell you that much like what we do, you're, as I talked about previously, right? You're actually asking your drivers beginning of the year, somewhere around then, and you make this part of your team's process when they're engaging with drivers. All right. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be every conversation or anything like that, right? But you're engaging with the drivers. So have those conversations. Hey, what did you like about last year's National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, or the things that we got, or could we do something better? Something like that. It's easy. It's a simple question, and it's actually generally a pretty good icebreaker when you're trying to get to know a driver and just get the conversation started with them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and guys, a lot of times they'll have a driver manager do that, what I see, but I don't think it needs to be tied to just one person within the organization.
No,
You know,
absolutely not.
it's not going to hurt if it comes from somebody in safety, comes from somebody in accounting finance. It doesn't matter. It's going to make those drivers again feel more appreciated on what they're doing, and that the carrier, actually has a vested interest in them. And I wonder how many carriers do ask their drivers. Justin, I think you've driven and you've worked for a few different carriers. Is that something that you see frequently, or is it something that
Yeah.
is typically out of the norm? And I can tell by that smile where the answer is going.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my time as a driver, no, I was never asked. And even in my last driving position, I was worked for an LTL carrier. We were close to the corporate office. We had a lot of visitors from the corporate office, a lot, and I can't recall one time that I was ever asked. They'd come out, they'd attend the cookouts and maybe the breakfast and things like that, but I don't remember ever being asked. And frankly, they didn't really put anything forward. No gifts, anything like that. Not even something that I could use while working. The food was good. It was nice having the people out there, but certainly that was a long time ago. By today's standards, that would miss the mark, I think.
Well, guys,
Yeah.
and the other thing I was thinking about here is, the different ways to ask a driver. Because now, if you think about it,
True.
we have a younger generation coming in. So we have to really start getting creative here. Again, we're working with Bulldog Productions here, and they put, podcasts out for carriers. So if you have a podcast, it wouldn't be bad to maybe add that in and have them reach out via email or however you communicate with your drivers. Put that in an ask, because drivers listen, especially the younger generation. They're used to podcasts. They're used to that type of technology. Other ways, surveys, emails. There's so many different ways if you can't see them face to face. Christy, Justin, what else do you guys think? I mean, those were three that just popped in top of my head real quick.
If I
Well, I
could
think
just
that's
jump
great.
on
Yeah.
real quick here, though. You
Yeah.
Go
you
for it.
mentioned it, right? The podcast thing. All right. I get it. We're doing a podcast too, but yeah, carriers are doing podcasts now.
Yeah.
Okay. Have your drivers on. If not just for National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, but throughout the year. Because I'll tell you, if you're targeting drivers and you're targeting your own drivers or future prospective drivers, they want to hear from your drivers. They would be the best people to have on, and certainly to speak about it on a public platform and to maybe champion the things that you guys have done for Truck Driver Appreciation Week, I think would be a great idea.
Guys.
I agree.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Christy.
hold on. Yeah, let me jump on in here too.
Yeah.
Okay, because I got some perspectives to share.
Yeah.
But I've heard of lots of carriers who have a driver advisory board or a committee of drivers that help them to test out new technology and give feedback on new initiatives and to provide feedback about, the driver experience at that carrier. And it would be totally appropriate to ask those folks, hey, I'm putting some feelers out. We want to know what's going on. Of course, also using surveys and other electronic means to solicit feedback, but it doesn't just have to be, okay, how was your day today? Or how was that route? Or, hey, you're leaving, tell us what we did wrong, right? You can ask those questions that are specific to events like National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, and really start seeing that feedback roll in so that your committee, which is of course create a committee, has some actionable things that they can start doing research on, because we know these things cost money. Right. And so, again, collecting that feedback by asking your drivers is the very first step, but it's a very, very important step.
Christy, and you touched on a lot of different aspects here. And I think that just flows right into building a budget.
Yeah.
You know, again, right now in the industry, money's tight. We all know that. I think we're on an upswing, which I think everything's going to turn. But, Justin, like you and Chris were saying earlier, this is something you have to plan out. I mean, you just can't run in blind and try to figure out.
Can't be a fire drill.
How is this going to work? I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to be, the results aren't going to be there. So this is something where you have to really be strategic and put some thought into putting this in a budget, and what do you want your spend to be? And, you can even look at, the return you're going to receive on this just by retention. Guys, what do you think about that? And Justin, especially with you at URS, how do you guys, plan that out for the year?
Well, like I'd shared before, we certainly are having those conversations, and you had touched on, driver managers having those conversations, operations managers and regional managers. It's everybody. Much like I always say, safety is everybody's responsibility. Well, retention is everybody's responsibility. And this is an effort in retention, right? So yeah, do we go in with like a set dollar amount? We're only going to spend this? No. I mean, we don't start that way. Do we ultimately probably kind of get there? Yeah, I'm sure we do. Like most anybody, once you get that feedback and you've got an idea of what you're going to present or what you're going to do for this very, very special week, then sure, then set your budget. Talk to your vendors, like you had actually pointed out, both of you guys, right? Is, you guys being with the vendor side is go ask your vendors to participate and to put something towards what you're doing for Truck Driver Appreciation Week. But I would also tell you that you need to go in there with a plan with them and at least share with them what you're doing, and certainly invite them. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, no, that's so true, because in building a budget, I think you set the framework and the tone. Some of the grumblings that I've heard from carriers over the last few years, drivers, I was talking to a carrier last year and they were like, look, we want to do something that we can do equally for everyone. Then we're going to have raffles on this day. We're going to do this on this day. And they had a week full of activities in the morning and then the evening, right? So they had it all mapped out, because one of their previous years, all they did was they did one raffle. They had 2 winners, and then everybody else didn't get anything. Right. And this carrier told me, they said, we will never do that again. They told us that they were so upset because, I mean, if you think about how many hundreds of drivers they had, 2 drivers got a TV or something, whatever. They won like the big gift, and everybody else was like, oh, I didn't have the winning ticket. Okay, I have nothing, right? And so they set out to make sure that they did something for everyone, but they had all their bases covered. And I really thought that was really cool. So they had to learn from that trial and error, because those drivers were not happy.
Christine, I like what you just stated. This is going to be a trial and error for those carriers who haven't done this in the past. So again, if one year it didn't hit like you wanted it to, don't be discouraged, because you're gonna have to tweak it here and there, and again, that's why you have committees. Create a committee, but that's why you have those within the organization. They can work around what's working, what's not working. They can take all that information and really build out a program that's going to be something that's solid, that's really going to be a driving force for your company. And, again, from my perspective, I always talk to others, who've done it and who've been successful. So like I stated earlier, reach out to other carriers, ask, what's working for you guys? What did you guys do? Talk to your vendors again, and not even for monetary. Say, hey, I know, Christy, you and I talk to, God, I can't tell you how many carriers a day. What have you heard? What are others doing that's really, really, working for them? I really believe that creating a committee is something that's just so solid that needs to be done for the carrier.
Yeah. But hold on, when we talk about creating a committee, I don't want Carrier Code podcast listeners to just think that, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to grab a couple folks and put them in a room and say, hey, this is your project."
Mhm.
Create a committee of people who are passionate, who are creative, who
Yep.
think outside the box. Those are the people who I want on any committee, right? But specifically for National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, they need to carry your passion, and so that the drivers truly feel that that appreciation, and they understand that this wasn't an afterthought, right? So it needs to be people who, from a practical perspective, they have to have bandwidth, right? Do you have time to
Right.
contribute to this committee and stay on task so that we can make sure it's a really, really great week, right? Anyway, just had to throw
Yeah.
that in there.
No, I
Yeah,
love that idea.
I think, well, Christy, I think we're getting to a part where you mentioned earlier the bonus, right? The bonus
Oh,
alphabet,
yeah.
right? So why don't we roll into that? Because I think we're starting to approach some of those topics.
Yeah, we are, Justin. We absolutely are. Okay, so the ABCs of National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. We already talked about the first one. Ask your drivers. There's multiple ways that you can solicit feedback from your drivers to, or not to, B. See, I'm like A1, 2, B. Don't mind me, y'all. But you need to build a budget. You need to know what dollar amount you're working with and how you're going to involve other contributions, possibly from your vendors. 3, C, create a committee. See, I knew I was going to do it. But create a committee. And here's another really fun one. D, debrief. Okay. I love a good debrief, because once the event is over, it's not really over until you've talked about what went well and what didn't. Let's talk about that real quick.
We talk about the committee piece, right? Bam, there's your debrief group. Okay, but you guys, on the leadership side, you need to step back, take that feedback, and then go through that debrief. Just like you said, right? What went well, what didn't. Take that feedback, maybe dig in a little bit deeper on some of those responses that you got. Make sure to have those conversations a little bit more in depth. Things that hey, what could we have done better? All right, or yeah, that really worked. That went well, and we got really positive feedback. Would you like to see that again? A debrief. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about a new initiative, maybe vendor evaluations or whatever it is, right? You're always having a meeting and a debrief internally to talk about the pros, cons, the wins and the losses.
All right. Execute in excellence. Drivers should not feel like an afterthought. Rocco, go for it.
Oh, we've been touching on this the entire time, guys. They do not want to feel like they're a number. We have to be very proactive in making them feel like they are part of this company, even if it's not a owner, or it's a family run company, whatever it may be. It could be a PE firm, whatever. They need to feel like they're part of this company, and you need to put thought into that. Again, that's why we have the ABCs now. We have the D. By allowing all those to fall in line, those drivers are going to feel like, you know what? They care about me. They made effort. And that slightest bit of effort is going to make the difference in retention. I can promise you that. That little bit of effort
Yeah.
is really going to go tenfold over, if you just threw this together in the last second.
For sure. Okay. A, B, C, D, E, F. Find ways to get creative. And then G, go the extra mile. So finding ways to get creative is just going to benefit you in the long run. It doesn't always have to be the same type of gifts. It doesn't have to be the same type of cookout. Again, you're going to be getting feedback, so you can find ways to get creative. But I'm even talking about in the delivery or of the gifts, right? What does that look like? It doesn't have to just be, and I'm a Dollar Tree fan, but it doesn't have to just be a Dollar Tree, paper bag with a little stuff in it, right? We got crickets and graphics and all kind of different people who are on your team who have skills that you can leverage to just make sure drivers can visually see excellence, and they feel that you've gotten creative with it, even from the selection of the events and the gifts. Like, make it reflect what your drivers want. Get creative with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guarantee you've got somebody on your staff, or probably many people, they're creative. All right.
Yes.
And if you don't know who they are, you need to open your eyes a little bit more and find those people out, because those are the ones that you're going to want being involved in this process, certainly at least getting their feedback. All right. Every organization has creative folks within them that could certainly help put that extra flair on this. Right. That's our Christy for us. Right.
Oh,
She's our creative one, but there's always someone, right? There's always someone in every group.
I love that,
for
Justin.
sure.
Extra flair. I mean, and that's
Yeah,
really
extra flair.
that's really the key point right there.
Mhm.
Go
Yes, it
number
is.
7. Go that extra mile. Put that
Go
extra
the
flair
extra
in there.
mile.
Take take an extra minute and really think about, if you were on the receiving end of this, how would you feel? And I think that's the best way to go the extra mile. Put yourself in that driver's shoes and and look at it from their perspective, because what you feel may be something that's fantastic and they're going to love. It may not hit that mark. So before you take that final step and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, put yourself in their shoes and go that extra mile to make sure it's going to, resonate the way you really want it to.
Mhm. Now, we've been talking about National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, and one of the other things that I've heard in talking to carriers, they had their C-suite reach out to every single one of they had over 1,000 drivers, but they made it a point that each driver was going to get a call from someone on their C-suite, right? And because they just wanted to have that conversation with them and let them know, hey, we appreciate you so much. Let me talk to you one-on-one, right? And they were keeping track of it and making sure that they knew who talked to who. But it was something that was really cool and important. They got a personal thank you from their CRO, their CEO, their CFO, all of them. And I was just blown away, because you already know how busy everyone is, but to know that they took the time to organize not just the events, not just the gifts, but a personal touch, not just from their driver manager or their terminal manager, somebody who they talk to every day, but their CEO, their C-suite. That was really, really cool. And I was like, dang, y'all doing the thing.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
Now
There was a lot.
that is going the extra mile. That
Yeah.
right
Truly,
there, that is absolutely
truly.
going the extra mile.
Mhm.
And I
Now,
love
everybody can't do it all, but
no.
think of ways that you can do it, right?
Yep.
And again, Carrier Code Podcast listeners, we want you to take some of this inspiration and think about what you can accomplish, realistically, what you can get done. All right, what were you going to say, Rocco?
Oh, I love that aspect, because that's what we do at Pedigree. Again, we're not, it's not from the driver's side, but when we onboard a new customer, they get a call from myself or the CEO or, somebody in the C-level, again, just to say thank you. We appreciate the trust. It's those little things, going that extra mile, that just makes such a big difference.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Well, this has been a really, really cool episode. We've been talking about National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. This week is filled with wonderful events that carriers do. But even on a personal level, you can thank a driver. You can thank a truck driver, because they deserve the thanks. They deserve the appreciation. Share the road with caution, right? You don't have to do anything extra. Sometimes you won't be able to say hello, or you can't identify, oh, did they come out of that truck or did they come out of that Corolla? You might not know, but it's okay. Share the road with caution, right? I think they would appreciate just that. But this has been a really, really, really cool episode. We've been talking about the ABCs of National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. Hopefully some inspiration for all you carriers out there who listen to Carrier Code Podcast. Thanks again for any drivers that are listening, for any former drivers. We appreciate you. Carrier Code Podcast listeners, we want to know what you're doing to celebrate your drivers this week. So go ahead and shoot us an email, knowthecode@carriercodepodcast.com. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear how your drivers are responding to all of the wonderful events that we know you are knocking out the park this week. Or if you have questions about any of the ABCs of National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, you can, again, drop us an email at knowthecode@carriercodepodcast.com. We would love to hear from you. All right. Carrier Code is brought to you by Driver's Legal Plan, the nation's leading CDL defense law firm, and produced by Bulldog, trucking's podcast pros. New episodes drop every week, so be sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss an episode. You can listen on your favorite podcast platform, watch on YouTube, or visit us anytime at carriercodepodcast.com. You'll also find us on all social channels at Carrier Code Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and until next week, I'm Christy.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Rocco.
And this is Carrier Code.